Picture this. A sweet old grandmother wearing a polka dot dress, baking fresh pies for her family, always smiling and laughing. She looks like someone who would give you warm hugs and tell you bedtime stories. But what if I told you this same grandmother killed 11 people with poison and laughed about it when she got caught? What if I told you she did this for over 30 years and nobody suspected a thing? Meet Nannie Doss, also known as the Giggling Granny. She was one of America's most dangerous female killers, and her story will make you think twice about trusting a sweet smile. This is the true story of how one woman used love as a weapon and got away with murder for decades. Nannie Doss was born Nancy Hazel on November 4th, 1905, in Blue Mountain, Alabama. She came from a very poor farming family and was one of 5 children. Her father, James Hazel, was a mean and controlling man who ruled his house with fear. He made Nannie and her brothers and sisters quit school when they were very young so they could work on the farm. They had no education and were not allowed to see the outside world much. From a very young age, Nannie loved reading romance magazines. She would spend hours dreaming about finding the perfect husband and having a fairy tale love story. But real life was nothing like those magazines. When she was just 7 years old, something happened that some people think might explain the evil that came later. While riding on a train with her family, the train stopped suddenly and Nannie hit her head very hard on a metal seat. She was knocked out cold. After that day, she complained about bad headaches, blackouts, and sudden mood changes. Nobody knows if this head injury made her into a killer or if she was just born that way. As Nannie grew up, she wanted love more than anything else. She wanted to escape from her mean father and the hard life on the farm. When she was 16 years old, she thought she found her chance. She married a man named Charlie Braggs, who worked with her at a cloth factory. Her father liked Charlie because he lived with his mother and seemed like a good man. But Nannie's search for true love was just beginning. What followed next was a trail of death hidden behind wedding rings and sweet smiles. Nannie's first marriage to Charlie Braggs started in 1921. At first, they seemed happy together. They had 4 daughters and everything looked normal from the outside. But soon, things went very wrong. Charlie said Nannie drank too much alcohol and acted crazy sometimes. Nannie said Charlie was mean and wouldn't show her love. Both of these things might have been true. The real problem, though, was Charlie's mother. The couple lived with her, and Nannie hated her mother-in-law. The old woman was bossy and always got involved in their marriage. Things got worse and worse in their home. Then, between 1927 and 1929, something terrible happened. 2 of Nannie's 4 children died suddenly. Both deaths were blamed on food poisoning. Back then, children died more often, especially in poor areas, so nobody asked questions. There were no medical tests done on the children's bodies. But Charlie was suspicious. He felt deep down that Nannie had something to do with their children's deaths. By 1929, Charlie had enough. He took their oldest daughter, Melvina, and ran away, leaving Nannie with their youngest daughter, Florine. When he came back a year later, it wasn't to fix their marriage. He had found another woman and wanted nothing to do with Nannie anymore. He left the children with her and ended their marriage for good. After her divorce, Nannie was eager to start over. She didn't waste any time. She began answering ads in romance magazines from lonely men looking for wives. This is how she met her second husband, Frank Harrelson, in 1929. Their relationship started like a beautiful love story, full of poems and promises. But behind closed doors, Nannie was learning a deadly new skill. She started using poison, specifically arsenic and rat poison, which were easy to buy back then. Frank turned out to be a heavy drinker with a criminal past. Their marriage quickly became bad, but they stayed together for 16 years. Then, in 1945, after Frank got drunk and hit her, Nannie decided she had enough. She put rat poison in his corn whiskey. He died within a few days. Nobody questioned his death. The doctors said he died from liver problems, which made sense because he drank so much. Nannie collected his life insurance money and moved on. Later, she said she killed him because he was violent, but there was no police report about any abuse. There was only her word and her strange laugh. Frank Harrelson was just the beginning. In 1945, shortly after her second husband died, Nannie's daughter Melvina had a baby boy. Nannie was there in the hospital room. According to Melvina, she saw her mother stick a hat pin into the baby's head while she was sleepy from the medicine. The child died soon after birth. The doctors said it was natural, but Melvina was haunted by what she thought she saw. Things got even worse that same year. Melvina had another son named Robert. After an argument with her mother, Melvina left Robert with Nannie while she went out for the evening. When she came back, the baby was dead. Nannie said he just stopped breathing. Melvina later claimed she found papers showing that Nannie had bought a life insurance policy on the child. After this, Melvina and her mother's relationship became cold and distant. In 1945, another family member died. Nannie moved in with her sister Dovie, who had been sick for a long time and couldn't get out of bed. Within just a few days of Nannie's arrival, Dovie died suddenly. The death was called natural, and Nannie helped plan the funeral. She played the role of a sad sister perfectly. A few months later, Nannie's mother, Louisa Hazel, came to visit. Nannie welcomed her warmly, and the two women seemed to get along well. But within days, Louisa was also dead. Again, there was no investigation. Nobody suspected anything wrong. Deaths of elderly family members didn't raise red flags, especially when the grieving daughter explained everything so calmly. None of these deaths made anyone suspicious. Nannie was seen as a helpful, cheerful relative. She baked pies, took care of sick family members, and kept smiling through each loss. What nobody realized was that Nannie Doss was systematically getting rid of people who annoyed her, disappointed her, or simply got in her way. It didn't matter if they were husbands, children, or grandchildren. She wanted peace, comfort, and sometimes money. As long as nobody asked questions, she had no reason to stop. After killing Frank Harrelson, her grandchildren, her sister, and her mother, Nannie Doss felt confident. Her methods worked perfectly, clean, quiet, and impossible to detect. Best of all, nobody had questioned her. Poison became her favorite weapon. That same year, she answered another Lonely Hearts ad and married Arlie Lanning, a worker from Lexington, North Carolina. They had only known each other for a few days before getting married. Nannie moved into his home and immediately played the role of a sweet, church-going wife. To the neighbors, she was warm and friendly, always baking and always smiling. But inside the house, it was different. Arlie was a drinker and was often away from home. Nannie didn't like being ignored. Just like before, she began slowly poisoning his food. She mixed arsenic into meals, especially stews and soups where the bitter taste could be hidden. Arsenic poisoning looks like natural illness, upset stomach, throwing up, belly pain, and weakness. It can look like food poisoning or a sudden heart attack, especially if the person already had health problems. Arlie got sick over several weeks, slowly getting weaker and weaker. When he finally collapsed and died, The doctor said it was heart failure caused by years of drinking. Nobody suspected murder. After all, his loving wife had stayed by his side the whole time, baking, praying, and smiling. Soon after Arlie's funeral, the house they shared mysteriously burned to the ground. The house legally belonged to his family, but Nannie collected the insurance money. She then moved in with Arlie's elderly mother to take care of her. Within days, the old woman was dead too. Again, no autopsy, no questions asked. Nannie left North Carolina quietly and moved to Kansas in 1952. There, she met her fourth husband, Richard Morton, a clean, well-behaved man from Emporia. He didn't drink or gamble and seemed like the calm, stable man she had been looking for. But it still wasn't enough. Within months, Nannie discovered that Richard had been writing letters to other women. To her, this was betrayal, and for that, he had to die. She returned to her tried-and-true method. Small amounts of arsenic were added to his food over several days. At first, he seemed to have the flu. Then he got much weaker. He had an upset stomach, was throwing up, couldn't keep water down, and his organs began to fail. Within a week, Richard was dead. There was no investigation, just another widow grieving her late husband. By now, Nannie had killed 3 husbands using poison. Each time, she played the grieving wife perfectly. Each time, doctors thought the deaths were natural. And each time, Nannie moved on without any consequences. But her final victim would prove to be her last. The pattern she had perfected over decades was about to fall apart. In 1953, Nannie met her 5th and final husband, Samuel Doss, through a Lonely Hearts magazine. He was a clean, conservative man and a church minister from Tulsa, Oklahoma. He had recently lost his wife and one of his children in a tornado and was looking for companionship and stability. Nannie, as always, was looking for love. They married quickly, but things went bad almost right away. Samuel was strict and cheap. He expected Nannie to live simply and didn't allow her to read romance magazines or watch television, 2 of her favorite things. He even controlled how much money she could spend. To Nannie, he represented everything she hated in a partner: boring, controlling, and cold. She left him shortly after the wedding and went back to Alabama. But when Samuel said he was sorry and promised to change, she came back. But she had one condition. He had to add her name to his bank account and buy 2 life insurance policies with her as the person who would get the money if he died. In September 1954, shortly after she returned, Samuel was taken to the hospital with a severe stomach illness. He got better and went home, thinking he had survived food poisoning. But Nannie wasn't finished with him yet. On October 12, 1954, she served him another meal with arsenic in it. This time he died. What Nannie didn't expect was Samuel's doctor. The physician had been suspicious during Samuel's first illness. When the minister came back to the hospital and then died shortly after going home, the doctor ordered tests on his body. The results were clear. Large amounts of arsenic were found in his system. It was murder. The police came to question Nannie Doss. At first, she played the grieving widow, crying and shaking her head. But when they pressed her harder, something inside her snapped. She began to laugh. She confessed quickly, but not just to Samuel's murder. Over the following days, Nannie calmly and cheerfully admitted to killing 4 of her husbands. Then she added more names: her mother, her sister, 2 of her children, her grandson. The list grew longer with each interview. Nannie Doss had finally been caught, and for the first time in decades, the trail of death behind her was finally being discovered. Nannie Doss shocked investigators not with the details of her crimes, but with how casually she talked about them. She showed no guilt, no sadness, no fear. Instead, she smiled, laughed, and made jokes. During questioning, Nannie admitted to killing 4 of her 5 husbands.
Why are you in the penitentiary now?
All the time back to my husband.
Which, your last husband?
Yes,
Did they say you killed any more?
yes,
Or your other husband? Which other?
3 of them.
She gave reasons that to her made perfect sense. One husband cheated, another was too controlling, one wouldn't let her watch TV, another drank too much. She described their murders with calm detail and then giggled. "I was searching for the perfect mate," she said. "He wouldn't let me read my stories, so I put rat poison in his coffee," she added with a chuckle. Nannie Doss's arrest and confession shocked the entire country. It wasn't just the number of people she killed that shocked everyone. It was the way she confessed. The grandmother-like woman who wore flower dresses and baked pies had quietly murdered her way through at least 11 victims, all while smiling sweetly and laughing about it. At a time when most serial killers were thought to be men who were violent and mentally ill, Nannie challenged every idea people had. Her crimes weren't done in dark alleys or isolated places. They happened around the dinner table, in bedrooms, and on quiet porches. She used poison, slow, quiet, and hard to detect, and she used it on the people closest to her. The public reaction to the case was a mix of fascination and horror. Newspapers covered her story with shocking headlines. Reporters gave her nicknames that showed the difference between how she looked and what she did. The giggling granny, the jolly black widow, the self-made widow. She seemed to enjoy it, even posing for photos with a big smile. The media attention only made her strange behavior worse. Some newspapers ran photo spreads of Nannie smiling while in jail. Others published hand-drawn timelines of her 5 marriages, each ending in death. Despite her confession to 11 murders, Nannie Doss was only ever put on trial for one: the death of Samuel Doss. Why? Because Oklahoma had the strongest evidence and legal control. The state charged her with first-degree murder. She said she was guilty in May 1955. Given her confession and guilty plea, a trial wasn't needed. The judge sentenced her to life in prison. During the 1950s, women were rarely sentenced to death, especially in conservative states like Oklahoma. Juries and judges were often reluctant to give women the death penalty, particularly those who looked elderly, motherly, or harmless. Nannie Doss was a smiling, grandmother-like figure, which influenced how people saw her. Even though she confessed to multiple killings, her manner made many people less afraid of her. She wasn't the image of a cold-blooded killer that most people expected, even though she was exactly that. Prosecutors in other states, including North Carolina, Alabama, and Kansas, thought about charging her for the other murders. But at the time, it was common practice to skip multiple trials when the suspect was already serving life in prison. It was seen as unnecessary and expensive to move her between states, especially since she was no longer a danger to the public. The trial got massive press coverage, but only because of its strange tone. The image of a smiling grandmother calmly confessing to a string of poisonings fascinated the country. Nannie Doss spent the next 10 years in prison at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. Even behind bars, she kept her cheerful personality. She spent her time reading romance magazines, doing needlework, and smiling for the occasional visitor or reporter. One prison worker later said, "You'd never guess she was a killer." She acted like someone's grandmother baking cookies for the church. When she asked if she could work in the kitchen, she was politely told no. But the giggling eventually stopped. On June 2nd, 1965, Nannie Doss died of leukemia in the hospital ward of the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. She was 59 years old. Interestingly, she died exactly 10 years after she entered prison. She was buried in Oak Hill Memorial Park in McAlester, Oklahoma. There was no large funeral. Her story faded from headlines, but it never completely disappeared. People don't forget the smiling grandmother who poisoned her family and giggled about it. To this day, she remains one of America's most deadly female serial killers, and one of the few to have been convicted based entirely on a confession without ever standing trial for most of her victims. In the end, Nannie Doss's crimes left a haunting message. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like someone's grandmother. Sometimes they bring you a slice of pie and laugh while you eat it. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most harmless. The case of the giggling granny reminds us that evil can hide behind the sweetest smile. It shows us that we should never judge people only by how they look or act on the outside. Nannie Doss fooled everyone for over 30 years by being exactly what people expected a grandmother to be: kind, caring, and harmless. But underneath that sweet exterior was a cold-blooded killer who saw human life as disposable. She killed for money, for convenience, and sometimes just because people annoyed her. She never showed real remorse for what she did. Even when caught, she laughed about it like it was all just a big joke. This case also shows us how different times were back then. Today, multiple mysterious deaths in one family would immediately raise red flags. Autopsies would be performed, investigations would be launched, and patterns would be noticed. But in Nannie's time, people died more often from illness, and medical science wasn't as advanced. This allowed her to get away with murder for decades. The story of Nannie Doss proves that serial killers come in all shapes and sizes. They don't all look like the scary villains we see in movies. Sometimes the most dangerous person is the one who offers you a home-cooked meal with a warm smile. If this case disturbed you as much as it did us, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories. Leave a comment below and let us know. What other twisted cases would you like us to cover? Until next time, stay safe and remember that sometimes the most dangerous people are hiding in plain sight, wearing polka dot dresses and baking pies. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.